Well, give the Lord a praise. Give God a praise. That's why we're here. Well, as you guys can see on the video, this isn't going to be a normal Saturday for you guys. I've been in 3 plane crashes. I've been stabbed 4 times. I've been shot twice. I've seen 23 people murdered in front of me. So when I talk to you today, understand I'm not here to entertain you. There's a lot of speakers that try to be funny. I'm not here to be funny. I'm not here to make you laugh. Turn me down, it's too loud. Bring it down a notch. But when I speak to you today, understand, guys, that life, I'm going to pick my words very carefully here. Life, as you will come to know it, is going to be determined greatly by these next couple of years for you. Where you are right now, the decisions you make. That's why I take people to the Philippines. I was just in Afghanistan 3 weeks ago. I don't have a lot of time in this session. I'm going to do a totally different message in the next, was it 5 o'clock? It's the 5 one. Are you guys invited to the 5 o'clock? They don't let you come to that one, do they? If you want to come, tell them I said it was okay. You can come to the next one. I was in Syria. I got shot right here in the back by a Russian sniper. I had my bulletproof vest on. You saw it in the video. Broke a couple of ribs. One of the ribs punctured my lung. Knocked me forward, fractured my skull. I was there to do medical work and starting Sunday school for these kids that live there in Syria in the middle of the war. And so, after I got shot, they airlifted me out. Israelis came and got me, helicoptered me out to a hospital in Jerusalem. I'd seen one of the ladies bring her child up the walkway towards where the camp was. I'm going to try to, you guys all come here tomorrow, right? You all are in church on Sunday? What are you shaking your head no for? Are you good? Do I need to slap somebody here? You all need to be here on Sundays. Okay? I'll talk about that later. Her son had got his hand cut off here by a piece of shrapnel from a bomb and wrapped up. She was carrying the son to me. I have a PhD from the University of Wales. I'm working on a medical degree now. And just so all of you know, I've got all the PhDs. I've got all that. But the PhD didn't teach me to do what I'm going to talk to you about right now. Because some of you think just because you are well-educated and that's what your goal is, make sure you understand that's not the end all. Look at me. Make sure you get this. Okay? So she's walking up, holding the kid, his right hand's all bandaged up. She falls about from here to that camera in front of me. I run out of the gate. I pick up the kid. I grab the interpreter, and the woman's just screaming uncontrollably, hysterical. I told the interpreter, I said, ask her what's wrong. Why? And she was crying so hard. Finally, we got her settled down. And her son, little kid, 7, 8 years old, had his hand cut off by a piece of shrapnel from one of the bombs that had been going off about 2 miles from our camp. And through the interpreter, I was trying to ask her, how can I help you? What can I do? And she took that bandage off of the hand of her son. And I saw just part of the bone where the thing had cut his hand off. And then she reached into a paper bag and took out her son's hand. And she said, Pastor, she said, can you help my son? Look at me. Don't miss this, guys. I don't live like you. I live a very different kind of life. Doesn't mean anybody's right or wrong. It just means we've made choices. I'm here today and tomorrow to get you guys to think differently. What is it that you want to do with your life? That woman is holding her boy's hand, and it got blown off several days before, so you know what the hand looked like. You're all smart enough to know exactly what I'm saying here. And I looked at her, and I said, I can't help your son. I can't help your son. Yeah, I got a PhD. That's nice. Sounds real smart. I'm working on a medical degree to be a doctor from the University of South Florida. That's great. I delivered a baby 2 years ago. But all my education, all of that, did not train me to look at that woman who doesn't have a chance in life without Jesus. That boy whose hand was turning black. And I picked up that hand from the mother, and I said, I cannot help you. I want to, but I can't. What does that mean to us today? We're in Singapore. Yeah. I come here a lot. I want to talk to you today, not as a university teacher, because I teach Old Testament in several universities in Europe. I'm not coming to you today as a television personality, although I'm on TV all over the world. I'm not going to talk to you today as a guy who writes books, although I've written a lot of books. I'm going to talk to you guys today as a man who, when I was your age, my mother left me on a street corner. She was an alcoholic. She left me on a corner. She walked away. She never came back. I sat on that corner for 3 days. No food, no water. Hundreds of people drove by. Hundreds of people walked by. You know how many people stopped? Only one. The person that stopped was a very ordinary Christian. Wasn't a preacher, wasn't anybody special. He was ordinary people, just like me and you. Yeah. Don't let the PhD fool you today. Don't let all the stuff that you will read about me in newspapers and books, don't let that fool you. Remember, when I was 12 years old, I was the kid who was left on a street corner. I used to stutter so bad I couldn't talk right. So I didn't talk. I still have a deformed rib cage right here because I had rickets from malnutrition when I was little. I hope all of you know how fortunate you are to live in Singapore. Do you understand what I just said? Would you like me to say it again? You ought to thank God every day that you live where you live. I just flew in from Manila this morning, where we do Sunday school with kids that live inside a cemetery. They're squatters. 1,000 kids live with their parents in the cemetery. Where I was holding the skull there at the end of the video, that's what I'm talking about. We do Sunday school for those kids that live in the cemetery, for the kids that live in the garbage dump. You ought to thank God every day you live here. You ought to thank God every day you have a church like this. Are you with me? I know you are. I know you are. I've only got a couple of minutes on this one, but I want to talk to you from my gut. Is that okay? You all good with that? Can you handle it? Let's give it a shot. I'll I'll be out there after the service. There's some books and some things. I know you guys are readers. If some of it makes sense, my personal story, a little bit of what I was telling you. That Christian man picked me up, sent me to a place just like this. That's where I heard the story of Jesus for the first time. And my whole life changed. That's what I'm praying will happen today. The book, Whose Child Is This? If I say something makes sense, a lot of guys your age take this and use it as a book report. One of them actually did a PhD just on my life. It's kind of funny. Who's a reader? Who likes to read here? Anybody enjoy reading? Yeah? It's all you. Merry Christmas. There you go. Some of you coming in were asking about the T-shirts. I'll say something on television, and then they'll take the quote, and they've put it on T-shirts now all over the world. I like this one. It says, "Follow your heart, but take your brain along for backup." That's pretty good advice, isn't it? I want to give this to a young lady. Who likes to wear T-shirts? Anybody? Everybody likes T-shirts. American T-shirts. Let's see. You want a shirt? Get up here. Get up here. Get up here. Perfect fit. Go. There's a lot of stuff back there afterwards. I'll be back there if you want me to sign your book or just hang out. If you got any questions for me about missions, about serving God, about making a difference, about what you want to do with the rest of your life, that's what I do, guys, all over the world. So I'll hang out. My next one here is at 5. There's also a chance for you guys to sponsor one of the kids that live in the garbage dump, that live in the cemetery. You can actually come and visit. I take all kinds of people every March from Singapore to go with me to the garbage dump, to the cemetery every March. If you would like to go with me on that, you can visit your sponsored child. I don't have a lot of time to talk about this now, but we'll be talking about it the rest of the day today, and of course in church tomorrow. All right? So that's all I'm going to say about that. But I want to talk to you about the process today. Life, how can I say this? Life all by itself is not enough. I have learned after being in the ministry for 50 years, I'm going to be 70 years old in October. On my 70th birthday, I'll be climbing Mount Kilimanjaro in Africa. I've learned that to get to where I am today, look at me. I started as a 12-year-old kid that was left on a street corner that nobody wanted. That's where I started. And now you see how my life has gone full circle. How did that happen? I speak a lot in university about process. See, your generation was raised, you go to the elevator, you push the button, you go to the top. You go to McDonald's, you push the button, and somebody comes on a speaker who can barely speak English, and you tell them you want a Big Mac, which is the only thing worth getting at McDonald's. And then you drive around, and magically your Big Mac appears. You've been raised where everything is quick, easy, especially in Singapore. You got the little thing on the car where you drive up And the gate just opens. Boop, 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 boop. Singapore's a great place. It's funny, right? It's a great place to live. So some of you think the whole world is like Singapore. Guess what? The whole world is not like Singapore. Some of you know that. Some of you are learning. I have learned over these 50 years of being in the ministry that if you're going to do something with your life of substance, that's something that's going to make a difference. Not just about getting an education so you can have a house, a car, a nice family. No, that's nice, but that's not the be-all, do-all, end-all, guys. You know that. There's more to life than just you. All of you are smart enough to know this, but sometimes you need a little reminder. That's why I like to come in and just slap people in Jesus' name. Just smack them upside the head and say, hey, listen, this is how. And people go, really? I can make a difference? Yeah. The latest statistics are only 1.5% of the world's population ever does anything significant with their life. Now that statistic all by itself, that ought to scare you to death. 1.5% of the whole world ever does anything significant with their life. Huh. So what does that mean? It means starting from today, my prayer for the service was simple, that Lord, somehow let us see ourselves differently. Let us see this nation differently. Let us look at the world differently and then ask ourselves the tough questions. God, what do you want me to do? What's my part in this world, in this place? It's a process. I was in, where was I? Southern California. I was speaking at a conference and had a little chance to go down to Mexico, down in Tijuana, just across the border in the U.S. So I was down there speaking, and I was driving back from Mexico back into California. I stopped to get some gas on the Mexico side. And I saw this, what do you call it? Like a touristy thing, you know, like a gift shop. I guess that's the word I want to use. So I had a little time to kill. So I parked the car, walked in this gift shop, and it was a pottery shop. And the guy that was making the pottery, this old Mexican guy, he didn't speak really good English. I don't speak very good Spanish, so it was quite an interesting conversation. Neither one of us knew what the other one was completely saying. But he was trying to do English, and I'm trying to do my Spanish. And I said, you make pottery? He said, sí, señor. And he said, what do you do? I said, I'm a pastor. And when people look at me and they know I'm a pastor, I don't look like the typical pastor. I don't talk like the typical pastor. You see, I box. I carry a gun when I go to certain parts of the world, as I had to the other night. So it's a little different sometimes when people understand what I do and where I go. And I don't know if you've ever seen anybody get their head cut off in front of you. You haven't. I know that. When I saw that little girl get her head cut off by Boko Haram, the terrorist group in Africa, we went in and rescued 23 girls that had been kidnapped. I worked for the President of the United States several years ago. Made a lot of great contacts with the American military. So we went in at 3 o'clock in the morning, rescued 23 of those girls that had been kidnapped by the terrorists. But In the process, the shooter, one of them got out of it, took a machete, cut the girl's head off in front of us. Why am I telling you this? Because I have learned, not just in a classroom, I have learned in the school of real life of what it takes to make a difference. And I was telling him that I was a pastor and I work with over 200,000 kids. It is the largest Sunday school in the world. And I was trying to explain to him, and we got to talking a little bit, and I asked him, I said, can you show me how to make pottery? And boy, his face, he thought, are you interested? I said, yes, very interested. So what I'm going to show you in these last couple minutes is what I learned from that old Mexican man. And maybe it'll make some sense to you guys. I believe it will. He said, Pastor, he said, the first part of making a creation, a pottery creation, he said, it always starts with the raw material, the basic raw clay. I was listening. And he walked over to this giant pot. He took his hands, watch me. He took his hands, scooped up this blob of clay, took it and just put it on this table. Basically, like this table I've got right here. It's just a pile, my God, just a pile of clay. No shape, no form, nothing. Just a pile of clay. He said, everything of value, Pastor, starts with the raw material. And the minute he said that, I thought, I'm going to learn something today by listening to this old man that knew some things that were life lessons. And I watched him as he took his hands and started doing this, started to form, started to shape, started to take away the unnecessary parts of the clay. See, in his mind, he knew what he wanted to create. It was here, but all he had to work with is this pile of nothing. Look at me, guys. Don't miss this. All of us, me, you, all of us, that's how we all start. We start as just kind of that clay that doesn't know where it's going, doesn't know what it can be, doesn't know what's possible until the master potter, Jesus Christ. If you'll give your life to him and say, God, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what you want me to do, but I'm willing to be molded by you. I'm willing to be shaped by you. And he took that pile of clay. I watched him. It was amazing to see him. I've got something back here. Let me go grab this thing. If somebody didn't steal it. Ah, here it is. Basically, it's just like this. Okay? You're going to be on that camera? You're going to work that camera? Okay. So, this is almost exactly what the potter was doing. I don't know where you all found this here in Singapore, but this almost identical to what I was watching that potter make there in Mexico. And he was shaping it here, over on this side, making this, you doing a close-up of this, or are you just standing there? What are you doing? Give me a close-up. See the lip here? They was making the lip in here, and you got it? There we go. That's good. Thank you, sir. And made this, and I mean, within like 5 minutes, this thing started to have what? It started to have shape. It started to have form. Before, it was just a pile of clay. That's the first part of the process. Some of you are writing this down on your phone. That's pretty smart. The first step of a creation that my God, that becomes something that's created of worth, of value. The first step is always the raw material. That's me and you guys. Remember, I was the kid left on the street corner. I may show some pictures tomorrow. I could show you up here. I can show you up here. Scars. My face was deformed when I was little. I couldn't talk. Still, to this day, my rib cage never developed right when I was a child. You are looking, my friends. Take a good, long look at what used to be the little poor boy that nobody wanted. My own mother didn't want me. She left me on a corner. But when that Christian man stopped and picked me up, he sent me to a place just like this, where I heard the story of Jesus for the first time. And I said, God, my mother doesn't want me. Nobody wants me. I said, but if you want me, here I am. And that night, when I prayed that prayer for the first time in my life, I felt like somebody loved me and my life changed. I turned my life over to Christ, even as a young boy, and I've never looked back. You heard what I said. I've never looked back. He took the raw material, moved it, shaped it, got rid of those things, the parts that weren't necessary. And I watched right in front of my eyes this master potter create something. You know what I'm looking at right here today? I know you guys aren't going to get this, but I'm going to tell you anyway. You know what I'm looking at? I'm looking right here. Because you know what I see here? This isn't just a bunch of young people. I've never looked at a crowd of young people like that, and I never will, because I know what's sitting here today. I was where you are. I sat where you're sitting. I was. Yeah. But I was willing to let the Lord walk me through a process. It wasn't always easy. It wasn't always simple. But now I get to take some of the truths that I have learned in these 70 years and share them with you guys. Listen to me carefully. He said, Pastor. I said, Potter. That was our new names for each other. I called him Potter. He called me Pastor. He said, Pastor. I said, Potter, what's the next step? He said, now we've got the basic shape. He said, but now I'm going to mold this exactly the way I see it in my mind. Watch this. And I watched him with he put his fingers in the water and began to smooth it, smooth off the rough edges, mold it, shaped it. It was, to me, I couldn't have done it. I got a PhD. I couldn't have done that. I couldn't have done it. But see, when you have the master potter, that in his mind, he knew what he wanted to create. Somebody give me a tissue or something. My nose is running. You got anything? Somebody just old piece of junk. You got that? Is that clean? I live in New York. It don't matter. All right. Thank you, dear. Thank you. Can I keep the whole thing? Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. Get with me later. I'll give you a t-shirt. So I could not create that with all my education, with all my degrees, but the potter knew in his head, in his heart, in his mind, what he was trying to create. God knows. God help us to get this, guys. God knows. God knows what he wants you to become. He knows it. You don't know. I didn't know it. I was a kid on a corner, man. I hadn't eaten for 3 days. Nobody wanted me. I didn't know. But God knew. God knew. And God knows exactly what it is that you can become today. You don't see it today. I know that. I didn't either. I get this. I've lived it. But God knew. And when I gave my life to him, guess what? Yeah. It went from the raw material into the molding, the shaping, the developing. That's where you guys are. That's why you should never miss a Saturday here. Does that make sense? Some of you come, I saw you coming in here. Hey, I get it. I like to laugh as much as anybody. I don't get to laugh as much as I'd like to because of the places I go. Like yesterday, being in the garbage dump, it's not funny. But I get it, it's good, it's fun. Fun to hang out with your friends, fun to do all, this is a great place. But understand that this is more than just a ha ha ha. Where everybody comes in, welcome, and you. I get it, I get it. I like the fun part, I like the ha ha ha. I like the, but understand, when you walk in here, every week, you better know where you're coming, because there's more to this than the ha-ha. But y'all know that too, don't you? Yeah. He molded it. He shaped it. I said, what's next, Potter? And he took the vase, or vase, whatever you want to call it. He sat on this, like a bicycle. He sat on, and he started pedaling it. And the front wheel was a grinding wheel. Watch this. And he took that vase, and as he was pedaling, and that wheel was turning, he took it like this, and he started to put it up against that grinding wheel. I said, Potter, what are you doing? He said, the third step in the process. He said, I have to grind off the rough edges. I thought, say it again, Potter. Say it again. He said, I got to grind off the rough edges. See, I've lived long enough now. I've asked the Lord, I said, Lord, grind off the rough edges in my life. Those things that shouldn't be there. Those things that are unpleasing to you, Lord. Those things. You understand what I'm saying? The process of the potter. I'm going to say it again. The process of the potter. It starts with the raw material. And then he moved right into the molding, the shaping. And then that third step was grinding off the rough edges. Yeah. And the more I'm listening and watching the potter with his creation, the more I realized this is just exactly life. This is exactly what God wants to do with everybody in the house. I don't care if you're a leader here. I don't care if you're in your 20s, 30s, or if you're just in the teenage years. Don't matter. God is trying to create something. Man, I want to just grab some of you guys and shake you. I did not know, guys, please look at me. I did not know when I was sitting on that corner for 3 days and 3 nights. How could I? It was impossible. But when I met Christ, I said, Lord, I'm a nobody. I got nothing. I'm sick. My body's deformed. My face was a mess. Had to have all kinds of operations. I said, but Lord, I'm willing for you to make me into what you want me to be. You understand what I just said? I'm willing, Lord, for you, not me, to try to make myself, but I'm willing for you, Lord, to make me into what you had when I was created. It was pretty hard for me, sitting on that corner, to think God had a purpose for me. Pretty tough, huh? Yeah, pretty tough. But I was willing to let him mold me. I said, is there another part of the process? Potter, tell me, what's next? He said, there's one last step. I said, please tell me. He picked it up and walked over to, it almost looks like an oven. It's like a big old brick oven. He turned the oven on, and the fire was, I could feel it. I mean, I was like from here to the oven, but that fire was hot, man, and I could feel it. I said, what are you going to do? He said, the last part of the process is, he says, I have to put it in the fire. I said, why? He said, because if it makes it through the fire, it will be strong enough, it will be tough enough. God help us. Help them to get it, Lord. If you make it through the fire, you'll then be tough enough. You'll be strong enough to be that man, that woman that can make it through the fires of life. One of these days, maybe some of you will get a chance to go with me. Walk with me. See some different parts of life. See kids eating garbage. Go with me to the cemetery. We can do Sunday school with us in the cemetery. Walk with me and see kids that will never have a chance in life unless they know Jesus. And you know that, and I know that. How then will they know? It starts right here in a place like this. It starts with you guys. Always starts right here. Always starts with a group just like this. Somebody that gets it and says, Lord, I'm willing, Lord, do in my life. I've seen hard times of life. I've seen the worst that life has to offer. And I've seen some of the best. But the tough things, the people murdered, all the stuff that I've seen, you know how I can still do this? Because I've allowed the Lord to help me to understand that He is always with me. There's been times in the jungle when I've actually had to, I'm not going to tell you what I've had to eat because it almost makes me sick all over again. But I knew every step of the way that the Lord was with me. That toughened me up so I can come and talk to guys like you, younger people, waiting to make a difference, wondering, God, what do you want me to be? What do you want me to do? And I watched him as he took it and put it in the fire. And then he took it out, let it cool, put it back on the table, and started to turn it like this. Watch me, watch me. And he took his paintbrush, and with the skilled hands of the craftsman that he was, I watched him color, put stripes, and then he took it and said, Pastor, there's the creation. And for just a moment I stopped and I thought, this piece of pottery is just like all of us. If you are willing to go through the process, one day you'll be up here, or you'll be somewhere in the world, at a job, at a business, in a university, and life will get tough, and you'll wonder, God, what's your plan? And then you remember the story of the potter. I actually bought some souvenirs from him. I had to get back to California. I walked out of his pottery shop, and I was getting ready to get in the car, and I looked behind his shop. And it was an area about the size of this front of the church. And it was filled with broken pieces of pottery. I thought, what in the world is that? And my curiosity got the best of me. I walked back into the pottery shop. I said, Potter, I said, I've got one more question. I said, what? Those broken pieces of pottery behind the shop, what is it? Why is it broken? Where did it come from? Listen to me, and we got to close. He said, Pastor, he said, every once in a while in the process, the clay will not do what I want it to do. I said, wait a minute. Tell me more. Tell me more, please. He said, sometimes it's in the molding. Sometimes it's in the shaping. Sometimes it's in the grinding of the rough edges. He said, sometimes it's even at the last step when I'm going to put it in the fire. He said, sometimes the pottery just will not respond. It will not do what I had designed it to become. I said, well, then what happens? He said, if the pottery will not do what I want it to do, if it will not listen. I said, how can pottery listen? He said, you'll know. You'll understand. He said, if it will not be molded and shaped the way I want it to be, he said, I have no choice but to take it and throw it in what they call a potter's field. I walked out of the shop, and I walked out into the potter's field. And I picked up a piece of the broken pottery. Something that the potter tried to create. Something that the potter had a plan for, had a destiny for, had a reason to create it. But for some reason, in the process, the pottery just wouldn't do what the potter wanted him to do. So he had no choice. He couldn't work with it anymore. I got in my car. I drove back to California. But I kept the peace. Just as a reminder for myself. Lord, here I am still. I'm 70 years old. Make me, in my last years, what you want me to be. Make me, Lord, in these opportunities that I have, even to be with you guys today. This isn't a joke for me. This isn't even a sermon for me. This is real life. This is real life. Let me never think, Lord, that I have a better plan than you do, because I do not. I don't want to end up in the potter's field. The purpose of the process. The purpose. I want you to bow your heads very quietly. Heads bowed, please.